Sometimes I can get so focused on the wrong things. This can happen in work, this can happen with my family, and this can happen in church. Why does that happen? I think it sometimes is just because it's much easier to focus on someone else's shortcomings than it is to admit or focus on our own. At least that's how I think it works for me. Uh, to tell you, I've always had a heart for praise and worship music, for contemporary praise and worship music. In fact, before most churches had a contemporary service, several of my friends and I had formed a band that traveled around and led praise and worship. So I can be very opinionated about what praise and worship needs to be. That being said, I can absolutely let a person that appears to approach it from a performance standpoint and make it about them totally distract me from worshiping. In fact, I caught myself getting into the weeds at lunch one day this week about that specific topic. It drives me crazy when God is planned out of a worship service and there can't be any deviation from what is practiced or what is on the prompters or the screens. But despite my dislike of some of these things, God still works and moves people and touches people in those services. The real loser is me because I've lost out on that time of worship. Matthew 7:3-5 says, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank that is in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." You know, I am so guilty of going around and basically having one hand over my eye because of a large foreign object in it and trying to tell somebody else about the little speck in their eye. And I know it's just not me. I see it all the time. It happens in church, it happens in work, it happens in families. Sometimes we form an opinion and we just don't listen or know what is going on with that person or what their thoughts are. James 1:19 says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." This week, a good friend of mine from high school shared this simple illustration with me, and it hit me between the eyes. A lady went to the pastor and told him that, "I won't be attending church here anymore." The pastor said, "Can I ask why?" She said, "I see people on their cell phones during the service. Some are gossiping. Some just aren't living right. They're all just hypocrites." The pastor stood there for a while in silence, and then he said, "Okay, but can I ask you to do something for me before you make your final decision?" Reluctantly, she said, "What's that?" He said, "Take a full glass of water and walk around the church 2 times and don't let any water spill out of the glass." She said, "Yes, I can do that." So she came back and said, "It's done." And that time the pastor asked her 3 questions. Number 1, did you see anybody on their phone? Number 2, did you see anybody gossiping? And number 3, was anybody living wrong? She said, "I didn't see anything because I was so focused on this glass so that water wouldn't spill out." He told her, "When you come to church, you should be just that focused on God." The story went on to remind us that we should not be focusing on people, but we should focus on God at all times. Colossians 3:2 says, "Set your minds on things that are above, not on the things that are on the earth." This week, I am challenging myself to make sure that I focus my eyes on God and not on the things around me that will distract me or annoy me. I hope you will join me in this challenge this week, and I'll see you next week on Monday Mornings with Michael.